Welcome everyone to our third episode of One Up Gaming Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Akela, and I'm your host Alex. Today we're gonna be doing a deep dive onto the Plucky Squire. It's a game developed by All Possible Futures, published by Developer Digital. It's a very popular publisher, as you all know, from indie games. This was a little 10-hour game with a little kid's story. Akela, would you explain a little bit more about what the story was about?
Yeah, so basically this is a pretty stereotypical fantasy story, you could basically say. It runs the line of a lot of like classic fairy tales, I would say. Pretty simple. Basically the whole idea is that you're the main character, the hero, called the Plucky Squire. That's your name. You have the evil guy, right, the villain. His name is Hump Grump. And then basically you obviously have your supporting characters and cast who help you along your way in your journey to defeat Hump Grump and his evil schemes. The cool part about this game is that the biggest focus on it is the idea of it being a storybook. And that means that you can, as the character, jump in and out of the storybook. And we'll explain that a little further in a moment. But basically, as you are trying to rescue your story from Hump Grump's evil scheme, he figures out that you are in a storybook, and he figures out that he can actually manipulate it because he knows what the ending is. And so basically he changes the rules, which then means you have to find a new way to defeat him and, save the day. And so overall, story-wise, super simple, super basic, right? The idea is it's meant to be written by a child. This is supposed to be kind of like a child's dream character that they came up with, and kind of the thing that inspires them to go on and be a writer in the future. And they kind of explain to you that's why you have to save the story, because you have to make sure that the child who's in charge of your story becomes successful in the future and that he can, pursue his dream, which I think that part's super cute and super cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not the most incredible thing in my opinion. But
It's
like
not the end of the world kind of story.
Yeah,
Well, the cool concept of this game is the 2D to 3D change of, you could say, the world. From moving from the book to the 3D world, which is the real world, per se. Which in the 2D world, you're in a kind of like Zelda top-down like gameplay. In the 3D world, you're kind of like a platforming and still keeping the Zelda kind of idea.
It is still top down, yes, but
Yeah.
it's a little different just because of the 3D aspect.
Yeah, which we'll go down about it a little bit. I also part of the book, 2D book kind of gameplay. It's you have some puzzles, word puzzles. Works a little bit with, you play a little bit with the book, tilting it, moving pages, and doing kind of puzzles which is kind of cool. That's like the cool concepts of the game, and we'll start going dive on those, which is what I'm excited for.
Yeah. So the one thing I kind of want to explain a little further too, though, is the idea of the book. So the cool thing is that the whole game, you can literally see the book, right? And so as you go from area to area, you literally will see the pages flip in the book while you're in 2D, right? And the cool thing is, like what you mentioned, is when you come out of the book, right, and you're in the 3D world, you can at some point get the power to flip the pages as well yourself from the outside, which is pretty cool. But I don't know, I think this game had a lot of cool concepts that it wanted to imply, but I think based off of how we've kind of concluded from playing it is they're not all perfectly executed.
No.
Which, again, we'll get to that a little further down the line, because there's a lot of things I think that are worth discussing about this game, for sure.
Definitely. I mean, that part of the page, the moving the pages, I thought that was so cool. Like, this game has a lot of cool ideas. My personal opinion, it has a lump of ideas that they lack a lot of depth, in my personal opinion. I remember looking at this game, like, when they announced this game, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Look at the art style. Like, this makes me feel like, a game when I was a child, like, I wish I would have, or it's the kind of art style or or color palette that I look at it and I'm like, oh, I need to play this, because it feels and looks unique. But when you are playing the game, it really disappointed me a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I remember when it was first revealed, I was super excited because it was another Zelda-like game.
Yeah.
At least that's what I thought it was going to be. And I mean, obviously the added 3D aspect was really intriguing, right? Because nobody else has really done that a lot. I know Mario Odyssey did it a little bit, right? But it was more of in a sense of an homage to old Mario games. It wasn't necessarily in there because that was a main mechanic. It was just more as a callback to old games.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that was cool, right? But it was more for nostalgic sake. Where this one, it felt like it was going to be more of the game. And it was. But I actually thought that ended up taking away from the game a little bit, unfortunately, was having those 3D parts. Because I thought all the 2D stuff was super cool. They had a lot of cool puzzle concepts. But like you just said, it all felt a little surface level, like they didn't really flesh out any of these mechanics, and they all just kind of did a bunch of things only to a mediocre level.
Yeah, they didn't want to explore a little bit more into the mechanics they made themselves. To me, I remember playing the game, I was like, oh, I'm so excited, I want to get to it. And then you start playing and it feels like a Zelda top-down game, and you get to your first puzzle, and it's kind of like, ooh, I'm really excited, I want more. I want more of these word puzzles that they're showing up at first, where you're you have a sentence there, and there's a word that you kind of have to change, and change the world around you, the world around the book, in order to get around and get around the story and continue. And I just expecting a little bit more of that through the game, and I was very disappointed because that's kind of the idea and concept that Zelda has, of you're being given these rules in a world, and then the game in Zelda just lets you do whatever you want with it. Explore the world. These are the rules of the world. Now, do all these puzzles with your own imagination. Try to figure out yourself. Figure out yourself with your own thoughts. And I feel like this game not just didn't give me enough puzzles, but it also took away that imaginative part, which is trying to hold my hand a lot. You know what I mean? Jot, you're gonna have to go up again. Oh, how sad. Well, we're gonna wait for you up here. You're gonna have to get off the book. It's kind of well, I already know that. Yeah. Just trying to tell me what I already know, and yeah.
Well, I think this brings up a good point. The weakest point or weakest part of this game, actually, for me, is all the side characters. So, for example, the Plucky Squire, his name's Jot, right? He has two friends who is one is named Violet and the other name's Thrash. Mm-hmm. So Violet, she's supposed to be kind of like an artist that's pursuing magic, and Thrash is kind of like a goblin guy that comes from a mountain, and his people are all about rock and roll, basically. And then you have as well another sidekick. His name's Moonbeard. He's kind of, your old sage guy that guides you and tells you what you need to do to complete your quests or whatever. Yeah. And then there's another one who is called Bookworm, who appears when you're in the 3D world. And between these four characters, the problem is that they constantly are telling you what to do. They're constantly stopping you, and then they congratulate you when you do a very simple task. And it ends up interrupting your gameplay. It ends up stopping you from trying to figure out a puzzle on your own. Yeah. And, I mean, a couple puzzles, I'm going to be honest, did stump me a little bit. I did have to get a little bit of help, but a lot of the time there were some very easy things that weren't even the puzzles that I could figure out, and they were go over here, do this, right? Hey, how about you look under that rock? What if you think of this? Or, oh, did you know that sentence, a word can be removed, right, for those puzzle with the words? And so it takes away that accomplishment of figuring it out. They just, like you said, handhold you, it almost feels like, which is so sad because there's so many good ideas in this game.
Yeah, that if well polished or with adding some depth to it, you could have the player have a very great, amazing experience. And now to add up, I mean, a good thing, I do think this is a good thing is the character design of the characters you're implying. I just want to add that up to saying as a good thing that I think Violet and Thrash make sense in the world, like how they're designed as characters, but at the same time, in dialogue or how they're written, they don't add up really that much to the world, to me at least. It felt more like a liability more than an actual help, or because they don't even help you fight.
They do a little bit.
They do a little bit, but at the end, but I felt like the combat was so easy as well. Like, that's the thing. You think the puzzles are easy. You're like, oh, maybe the combat's a little bit harder. No, it's not. It's childlike. It's really, really easy, even in the hard mode. And when they help you, it kind of feels like it take away that kind of that challenge or that learning curve,
Well, about the hard level, that's the thing that makes it crazy. Is it says, oh, you can pick adventure mode or story mode, and I'm like, if you are gonna make it that easy, even in adventure mode, why are we giving an easy mode? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, I seriously feel like
it seems insulting.
Like, yeah, it does. That's how I felt. A little bit insulted because adventure mode's supposed to be a little more hardcore, according to them. And to me, a child could go through that too. A child that has not played video games before could
on
easily
the hard mode
play through the hard mode of this game. I know. It's like, I'm not asking this game to be Elden Ring, but we played the Zelda games before, and they don't have any. I mean, some of them have difficulty levels, but right now, for example, we're playing Echoes of Wisdom, and I don't feel like that combat feels harder than this combat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that's saying a lot because other characters fight for you. Just saying, and that feels funner as well. And the combat of the game, it doesn't just not have depth, or pretends to have depth actually, because they have a jump attack, you have a spin attack, like if you were Link, for example.
Yeah.
But then they pretend to oh, look, there's this currency that you can spend to upgrade your sword, upgrade your spin attack, upgrade your jump attack. But there's no boss battles that you really use this combat for, because instead of boss battles like a normal boss battle in Zelda, where you just use the combat mechanics, they give you mini games. So there's no difficulty in combat at all, because then you have your normal enemies that are very easy to beat.
Yeah.
And they give you hearts. They fill up your health if you're missing one heart or two. They won't even let you have one heart left, and if they do, you get lucky next time and you get a full heart that fills up the whole thing at once.
Yeah, I'm gonna admit that one is a little too much. Like, I think any game like that, they do leave you hearts when you're battling enemies, right, to help you.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely when they give you one, and it only happens though when you're at least below half your health point, and then it gives you one that fills it up to 100%, and it's like, thanks, but there's no stakes in it, because once you get hit down to a certain point, you're most likely gonna get a full hearts.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
I just feel like that kills immersion of the game, because I mean, I'm just saying, it just kills the vibe of actually being in an adventure. That the feeling of danger, it just kills the feeling of danger. And I'm saying, I'm not asking this to be a Dark Souls or anything. I'm just asking to have some kind of combat that doesn't feel insulting. That you don't think I can just mash one button, or there's a dodge mechanic too. I never used that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
I basically forgot that existed.
There's a dodge button. Exactly. You didn't even use it. you barely even think while you're fighting in
Yeah.
that game, and that's adding to the puzzles are very that very there's not enough of them, and they already hold your hand there.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about puzzles, this is the crazy part is that there were so many things that were considered puzzles that were like random things. So for example, in the 2D book, there were a couple times where it switched from a top down to more of like a 2D side scrolling, right?
Yeah.
So then you had to like navigate that, and some of the levels were like all dark, and you had to push a button or you had to put an object on top of a button, to like open a door so you can get through. And that's like, pretty classic side scrolling platforming kind of puzzling.
Yeah.
So there's that, right? That one was fine. It wasn't anything crazy. Then there was their best puzzle stuff, which was the words, right? Which, the book would have sentences in it, and some of the words could be hit, and then you could pick them up and move them and then replace them with other words. I thought that was fun because there was this one part where you had the word cheese because you needed to turn something into cheese. And I remember going, well, what if I try turning this other object into cheese? And guess what happened? It turned into cheese. And I thought that was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Because, that's where my creativity can really flow, is being able to take these words and put them in different places and change the book, change the story, change how it is laid out in there. And you could have done so many cool things with that idea, because it is a storybook, right? Storybooks have words in them that explain what's going on, and to be able to change that up would be so exciting. But they don't do that. They do it minimally, and it feels like it's because they just didn't have enough time to I don't know if they didn't have enough time, or if they just chose not to, or they didn't know how to make that work without making it feel overwhelming and because that's a lot of programming, that's a lot of planning, right?
Yeah.
But I think about it, and they did all these other things that could have easily been not there.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they thought about trying to go more deep into it, but they maybe realized that playing with words and sentences can sometimes be a little tricky. It can be hard. Some words might not work with certain things, because I know there's some puzzles that the cheese might have probably worked out, but some of them it wouldn't. You know what I mean?
And that's fine. But I'm gonna be honest. There was one moment where I tried putting a word in a spot and it wouldn't let me. That's
true.
all they had to do.
That's true. And I know you mentioned something out of here that was it would be cool that you could just go back to those chapters. Let's say you're in chapter 5, because there are 10 chapters in this game. Let's say you're in chapter 5, and it would have been cool to you have this word puzzle. You can go back to the chapter 1 pages, get a word from there, and try to change the world though. And I think that's, like I said, that inspires creativity. That inspires being, having imagination of how to solve these puzzles. And I think part of the reason I also think the game lacks on pacing as well and depth is the fact that 2D 3D changing, when you change to 3D, for example, going back to the combat being too easy. I feel like since the 3D part doesn't really have doesn't have really puzzles at all, that part feels very, very, it felt like a chore to me. It really felt like it was unnecessary. I mean, I know they were wanting to play with, there's little drawings around the desk, which you can make yourself 2D for 30 seconds to get through the platforming or to get to the place you have to go. But the combat and the platforming of that area was very, very meh. I mean, the combat was already meh, and the platforming was meh. It's not the end of the world. It's not Mario. It's not Astrobot. It's a part, and that just made that part of me made it I don't want to say torture, but just like a chore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know why? This barely came to my mind. So, the 3D parts, what happens, right, is you do all these tasks in the 2D world, and then it literally tells you, oh, you have to go out to the 3D world. There's an object you have to recover or obtain in order to progress in the story in the 2D world. So the problem is what happens is that they feel like two separate games. They feel like two separate things, right? So like when I think of going back between 2D and 3D, I think of like having to constantly go back and forth, and you have to move things up from the 3D world into the 2D world.
Yeah.
And they do it a tiny bit, right? There's a couple instances where there's like an object in the 2D world that you can pull out into the 3D world and use, or vice versa. But like if you really want it to be both and them to work seamlessly together, you need a lot of that back and forth, and to make that fun having to move things in and out. And they do that a little bit while you're in the 3D world. Like you said, there's like sticky notes and pieces of paper in some of the places. And so you can go inside those and walk around in 2D, and then you come back out and you're in that 3D world again. And that was kind of cool. But the problem is that you go back to the main story stuff, which is inside purely 2D. And so what it just creates this separation between them.
Like it's a different game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one game's better than, I mean, I will say the 2D parts were better than the 3D parts, because the 3D parts are very, like I said, lackluster. Like,
yeah. It's just a very straightforward, oh, you have to climb up this area to grab this item, and then you have to maybe do this other mini game to get the item, and then you're like...
And let's not forget that Bookworm's there, the one character that's constantly telling you, oh, good job, you got the stamp. You can go back to the world now, to the 2D book, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, the stamp's up there. You can climb that ladder and, you know, you can get it, you know? It's like,
yeah.
that's just how it felt.
The crazy part, though, is like the first two chapters, you think, yeah, this is fine. And the problem is what happens is you get to chapter 6 or 7, and you start to realize, like, oh, I thought that was just part of the tutorial. No, it's not the tutorial. That's the whole game.
The whole game is a 10-hour tutorial. I'm not joking.
That's really what it is.
And that's without mentioning the mini games in this game, which I mentioned that there's no boss battles in this game. So that's why, to me, combat is very pointless. Like, it feels a little pointless to have it.
Well, and the problem is the boss battles aren't really that related to even Hump Grump, like the evil guy.
Right. They're just random characters in the world, in the whole world. Like, you first fight a badger, Punch-Out style, like a Punch-Out game, trying to box him. And yeah, it's the Punch-Out minigame.
Yeah.
Then I think you go through the bug place. Is that true? I can't even remember.
I don't even remember the order, but there is one where you shoot bugs with like arrows.
Yeah, and you have to get that arrow from like a card. You know, you go inside a card in the 3D world, and you have this kind of turn-based combat against this elf.
Like the card character, yeah.
To get the arrow, which I thought was actually cool. That part, I mean, this is going to be in the conclusions, but, you know, I thought this game could be just easily a turn-based game. But moving on. Moving on. You have another minigame where you're in a jetpack and you're, like, shooting a gun. That's also in the 3D world, I believe.
Yeah.
I think.
That's in the 3D world. You go into a mug.
Yeah. I think it's when you're getting, I don't know.
A jetpack. You have to get a jetpack.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, this is the problem.
It's like, it's too much. And I'm not saying too much too much can be bad. Like, this is the case, right?
Yeah.
That there's too much ideas here that they just weren't able to scope it out to just a couple of them and just try to, let's work it out on these, you know? Let's try to focus on these and make a better game, more immersive.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, none of these ideas were bad. None of these mini games are bad in any way, shape, or form. They were all, like, for the most part, pretty fun. I thought they were entertaining. Yeah. But the issue comes is that they didn't use the core mechanics enough. So now all of a sudden it feels like there's a disproportionate amount of mini games versus core mechanics.
Like, it feels out of place.
Yeah, and all of the mini games feel out of place because they're part of the main story, but they don't necessarily have anything to do with the main story. And like you said, there's no boss battles using core mechanics. And so
And I think that's part. I think that's part of the reason why it feels out of place too. Is because I played other games where there's mini games, but they have them as side quests or like a secondary thing. And if they add them in the story, to me, it's like, oh, that makes sense because they have them as side quests,
Yeah.
and they just have it once at a time. Not every time. They just have it once at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And-
like when you say that, my first thought is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I mean, I didn't play it. You played it. I watched you play it. I helped play Queen's Blood. But, there were so many of these mini games and things that you could do that, in all honesty, technically don't make that much sense within the game
Right.
and the story of the
Yeah.
game. But like you said, they're side quests. And the thing is the rest of the story and the rest of the game is so huge
Right.
that it's like, it's fine. It's whatever,
Yeah, it's like they're optional. You don't have to really do them, but they because of that, you don't feel like, oh my gosh, this is killing the pace of the game, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now there is I've heard some people that complain about the for example the ones that are not optional in that game they feel out of place, which I think that's valid. I think that's valid because that's how this game feels.
Yeah.
Plucky Squire. Every time you get at the end of the chapter, mini game, and it's kind of like, ugh, like, and then you get to the end. I mean, you get to the end. You fight Humgrump, and I think, or the whole time I was thinking, oh, am I finally gonna find him with combat? No, mini game again.
Yeah, you do 3 of the mini games you've already played, and then you do a final mini game in the 3D world where basically you just shoot him with the
With-
spaceship almost.
Yeah, and those 2 mini games are with your 2 side characters are very annoying through the whole game.
Yeah, and on the topic of side characters, it was kind of funny when I first started playing the game and I first met Violet. I was starting to think, oh, am I gonna have like turn-based combat, or I was starting to think this has got to be a game where you have companions that do other things, like a lot of your other like RPG games, right, with companions or stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
or like the JRPGs or whatever. And then she just followed me, and she only followed me. And then I was like, okay.
And then another character comes in, and he just follows you.
And he does the exact same
And he
thing.
kept following you up
Well-
until you reach to a mini game where it's a rhythmical mini game, which you don't really need the music for. You just need to push the buttons at a certain rhythm, and you're fine. You can even play it muted, and it will be fine.
Yeah.
I actually thought the mini game of Violet was it was fun.
It's just a bubble popping game. I don't even know what that's called.
Puyo Puyo.
Puyo Puyo.
Yeah. Puyo Puyo.
I mean,
Tetris.
that's a fun game on its own. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's been around a while, but my problem was with that game is, okay, so you do it once somewhere in the world. I don't remember when. Doesn't matter. But at the very end, when you're defeating Humgrump, you do the other characters. So Thrash's rhythmical minigame, you do his, then you do hers. And I lost like 3 times doing her
Yeah.
minigame because it wouldn't give me the colors I needed of bubbles. And like, that's frustrating in a boss battle for
Yeah.
me.
I think to describe it, yeah, for a bus battle was
Like, it's fine
ridiculous.
if that's the game or like that's a mini game. It's whatever. It's how it is. But it's the boss battle. It's the final battle, and I can't win because I'm just unlucky, and that bothers me.
I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, bother me too. I lost a couple of times as well, and I mean, I just don't know what to say. It's just ridiculous
Yeah.
to me. It's like the whole mini game was just like I would personally like I said, that mini game would have been fun or more fun if that was a side quest, or if that was something outside of the main story. Don't put me mini games as main story. Put them as a side thing. There's the one world, the one chapter where you go to Artia, when there's all this, there's all these historical artists around, and I thought that chapter, like that whole world, was cool. You could have put a room there or a building there where you could access to all these mini games, and have like different levels of them. For example, that's just what I was thinking as a side thing, and instead of having them as boss battles, polish your combat and just make your combat how it is, how it was designed to, and make it so like I actually feel like there's like I'm progressing, like I'm getting better at it,
Well, and you could always use some of those 3D elements in your boss battles too.
Right.
You know?
I thought it would have been cool, for example, if they did boss battles where you had to switch back and forth sometimes for 2D to 3D.
Yeah.
Like, example, like you're fighting him on 2D, like doing the normal fighting. Usually this happens like in a platformer, for example. You're doing something on 2D or 3D, and then the boss, you follow the pattern, you do something to the boss, and the boss is knocked out, so you have an opportunity to hit him, and let's say you have to switch to 3D or 2D to do that. Something like that,
Or like he jumps over a chasm that you can't reach, and so you have to go out into the 3D world to either go to the other side or to grab an item that you can like put inside the book or whatever. Or like, you have those stamps, like one of them is a bomb stamp.
Yeah.
Like you could go out into the 3D world and try to have to bomb stamp him, like.
Which that was a mechanic with certain things in the game.
Yeah.
Of using the bomb to certain enemies.
Or like if you don't do it right, he could hit him back out of the book because they're special. They can come like in and out maybe.
Yeah. And
you could accidentally get hit by your own bombs. Because obviously if you're in the 3D world and they're in the 2D world, you have to find a way of creating, that difficulty for the player.
Yeah.
Because there could be an issue of, it's too easy if I'm here and they're there.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's so many ideas.
Yeah. There's like so many things they could have done, and I just felt like either because they were wanting to add too much, they just weren't able to do more. I mean, and what we're throwing here, it's not like we know better.
Yeah.
But I just feel like me as a player, you as a person that study game dev, me as a player, I kind of feel insulted that you think I cannot I can't fight and progress through the game in hard mode. Like I pick hard mode. Like I understand if it was this easy for like the easy mode, but like I'm sorry, I'm just gonna come back to that. It just feels a little insulting.
Yeah.
Now going back to like what I was saying about the turn base, and you were saying that too, how like I thought this game would be perfect for turn based because yes, you have these characters following you all along, all through the journey, that they don't do anything other than stopping you and stopping the pace of the game. That you could easily have it like, there's enemies that just the simple thing, you can hit them and then you start turn based combat or something like that. Turn based battle.
I thought turn-based would be so cool.
She's a magician. She has like magic attacks, or she's kind of a healer. Violet. Thrash is like your dude that's like strength, like because he's got drums, right, and he can use like music attacks or something, sound waves. And you're just a knight. You just have like the most basic stuff.
Yeah, but you can do the jumping in and out of the book. Think about if you took your turn to jump out of the book, and then you could do some like really cool move outside of the book, or
right.
Anything like that.
Mm-hmm. See, that would have been a cool idea. And I think that would have made the game way better. And sometimes, there's characters that jump in and help you out. Like there's the flamingo bird.
Oh, yeah.
You could have him add to the party for the chapter. And you can use his attacks for a little bit, and you can learn new attacks from them. You can learn like one attack from them. So, there's ideas that you can get out of these different genres that are out there that I don't know. It just felt like it felt like a disappointing.
Yeah.
It was a disappointing game for me.
It definitely suffered from too many fun ideas and too many things that they wanted to accomplish. Especially being an indie game, right? Like when I was thinking about it, I've had some experience doing game development. I haven't published my own full game, but let me tell you, just trying to build something as simple as a Flappy Bird game takes a lot of work. And so for them to add like 6 different mini game ideas on top of all of the other, like I said, core mechanics is a lot of work. And it, unfortunately, like we said kind of at the beginning, made it all very mediocre. The whole game just comes off as mediocre. And then the worst part is again, those characters are guiding you so much. They're talking to you so much about what you need to do that it just makes you feel like this is the most mediocrely easy game out there. And I feel bad saying that, because I know as an indie studio, it's hard getting out there. It's hard, making a game that people want and being able to show off what, your creativity is. But at the end of the day,
At the end of the day, this kind of criticism is what's going to make them better.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, I mean, I don't see it like, oh yeah, this was fun. Oh, I would recommend this. I mean, I will probably, some people will recommend to play this, but this is not the kind of game that, I wouldn't go back to play it because it was like the last 3 chapters for me, I started to feel, oh my gosh, this is, and I play long games. I played through freaking Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and I put 120 hours to it. So you can't tell me I can't go through long games, This was a 10-hour experience that I was willing to do, and I was very excited to do. And by the last 3 hours of the game, I was feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose it here. Like I want to finish this already. This is dragging along so much.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it felt like it could easily have been a 5-hour experience that was dragged out into 10.
yes. And I totally agree with that. Yep.
And I feel like there's a lot of things that it suffers from. I think another thing that actually does take away from this game is I feel like they were trying to stay too true to the idea that this is a kid's book, right? A kid's novel that is supposed to be very, what's the word? Well, if you know kids, how they are, they're kind of funny about things. They're overly dramatic, and it's, about things that aren't even dramatic, So, like, it feels that way. And it just...
Yeah, I know what you're going to talk about here.
It just suffers from it. It's just so ridiculous. Everything's ridiculous and funny and stupid. And you have, like, for example, this character, Moonbeard. Now, when I first saw him, I thought it was absolutely hilarious, too. But... the problem is being an adult, as it continues throughout the whole story, it drives me nuts. He's supposed to be like this cool guy, and he's like a DJ, and he's got his sunglasses, and then he dies, but then he comes back, and he's like a cooler Moonbeard that's white, like Gandalf the White.
That's what I thought when I saw that. I'm like, wow, they really took this out of Gandalf, didn't they?
And it's just so cheesy. Which, cheesy's not bad. I'm not going to say cheesy's bad, but...
oh, come on. We play games that are for kids that is not this.
But they're not cheesy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, they're better than this in a sense.
Yeah, and then like the other guy Thrash all the time, he does, the rock on cymbal, and then they, like headbang for a moment, and all of his people headbang for a moment. And then, the whole story of Hump Grump is just absolutely so stupid. It's something I would imagine a little kid coming up with, which, like, I get that was the point, but it takes away from the experience for me.
Yeah. Like, there's nothing really that helps you carry through the game. Because sometimes there's games that, even if gameplay's not great, the story helps you, like, okay, I can get through this gameplay because I want to see what happens next, Like, there's games that's the way they are. But this is not the case. Like, because the story, it's basic and childish. Of course it is childish. But not in a good way. Childish not in a good way. Because we've played games and watched movies, that are childish. But they're pretty cool movies. They're good. Or good games. Or with good stories. And sadly, this is not the case for the Plucky Squire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I definitely think that, just kind of like for me, conclusion-wise, not like a full conclusion, but This game had a lot of potential, 100%. I, had been let me rephrase. I was very excited when it came out. Unfortunately, I was disappointed. I think the characters needed to be improved. I think they needed to cut back on a lot of their mechanics that were unnecessary. I think they could have taken out all of the 3D stuff, in all honesty. I don't think it was really necessary. Or if they had chosen to do 100% 3D, they should have just stuck with that and ran with it and not focus so much on the book of the story, And then I also think that, they should have really, just upped a little bit that difficulty for you and made it a little more challenging, puzzles and combat. And especially in specific areas or, at the very end of each chapter where you do boss battles. And they should have been true boss battles. I would maybe recommend it to people, but not as like you need to play this. It's more of like hey, it's kind of a fun game. You might want to check it out just to like get ideas. I think it's a great idea generator.
I mean, that's what the game sells itself for.
Yeah.
That's actually going to be part of my conclusion. Actually.
But I would never pay full price. I think $30, it felt a little steep after playing it. When we bought it, it seemed like, yeah, whatever, fair. But then finishing the game, I was like, yeah, I don't think if I had known what this game was, I would have probably only paid about half of that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
$15 seems fair for what it is because they did put a lot of work into it. And I know that sounds silly, but everything works really well. I mean, it plays well. There were a couple of technical issues when I first played, but I think they did patch those since I played, because you said that you didn't notice any of those yourself.
Yeah, I played it through a little bit after she played through it, and I saw like glitches. Like there was like a glitch in the 3D world where you were jumping, and then the frame rate would like drop when you fell back to the ground. It would drop like 20 frames every time.
Yeah.
And I was playing on the PC, and I was like, well, this is weird. But then I think a day or two after that, I didn't see that after, and I didn't see any glitches or bugs at all. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, it's a good game. It's not the best. I don't think it's going to win any kind of Game of the Year awards this year. But I would say it's probably a solid 6 out of 10. Like I said, it's not bad by any means.
Yeah, for my conclusions, I would just close by saying like this game story does the game and the story inspires you to be, use your imagination, be creative, but the game itself, the gameplay doesn't do that. And so for me, since the combat's lackluster for me, the lack of difficulty, learning curve, feeling like I'm actually, at first feeling like, oh, I'm struggling. I have to learn these buttons and I have to learn how to dodge a little bit, or, not just go and mash the button and kill them right off the bat, and have some sense of what I'm doing and not just go through it as I'm just passing through a hall. To me, this game is also a 6 out of 10. Like I would recommend this to people just because, yeah, I think it has some cool ideas, like you mentioned. Like I think it's a game that if you are a game dev, I think you could play it, and it will be fun for you because you'll be like, oh, all these cool ideas they did, and you can probably get some inspiration and grab some of them and try something out. I think that's cool, or just also I think it's a good game for children.
Oh yeah, I would definitely say if you've got kids who are, in the age range of 6 to 12, they'll probably really enjoy the game. I think all the things we've complained about, they wouldn't even notice.
like they wouldn't care about the story, for example, like that we talked about. They might care about pacing, but I doubt it. You know, like I think the mini games they will think they will be cool. You know, the characters they'll think they'll be cool. You know how kids are.
They're easy to please.
Exactly, and so I will probably recommend this for kids, but it wouldn't be like a first recommendation kind of thing. Like I would recommend other games before this one, but you know, and same thing. I think $30 is too much for this game. $15, it's good, and that's saying a lot because I feel like there's some indie games that I felt like these are not worth $25-$30, but they've been way better. Like they're way better experiences than this game was for me, and that's also part of my disappointment on this one. So, same as you, 6 out of 10, mediocre experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is going to be the end of our episode today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and listening. We really appreciate any of the support that we can get. Please make sure to follow us and make sure to give us a rating. We obviously really need that in order for this podcast to get better and get more people who can see it.
Yeah.
So please do that. If you want, you can also follow us on Twitter. We are on there and we post random thoughts and opinions on things that are going on in the gaming world. Our podcast, our Twitter account is OneUpGamingPD. So please follow us there as well, and then we'll update you anytime there's also a new episode that'll be coming out. We are trying to upload 1 episode per week every Monday. So please.
Yeah. Please stay tuned. We are trying. We try to play through the games 100%, and to give you a fair review of each game that's coming out, or games that are already out, and just give you some thoughts from your fellow people. We're just normal people that we just play games. We love games, and it feels there's something like this. I feel like it's missing, and we need voices out of people that actually just play games, and they're take away all the bad stuff that's around them. It's like we just play games, and we just think they're fun.
Yeah, definitely our goal though is 100% completion. Obviously not 100% completion, but at least a completion of the entire story of any game. Because honestly, right now, I feel like we've been seeing a lot of people who review the games, and after you find out that they only played about a quarter of the game. Now, I know we won't ever be perfect either, but that is our personal goal. So we can really, truly feel like we're giving a full, in-depth review of the entire product and of itself.
Yeah.
Like I said, sorry, this is going to be a moment, but the Plucky Squire, when I played the first 2 chapters or 3 chapters of this game, honestly, my review probably would have been way different. I probably would have been 10 times more positive. I probably would have thought it's an amazing game. But the reality is that by the time I got to the end of the game, my opinions changed, and I felt differently because of how they handled the progression in there. So that's why we're striving for 100% completion before reviewing any game. That may mean you get the game, our review's a little later than most other people's, but you're going to get a more in-depth, a more full review that way, and that's really what we're here for.
Yeah, and we're trying to do that, and so please stay tuned weekly every Monday for our next game.
Okay, we'll see you guys then.
Yeah.